Friday, July 11th, 1969, Cleveland, Ohio. A 20-year-old bank teller walks into the vault of the Society National Bank on Public Square. Nobody looks twice. Why would they? He's done this 100 times. He starts packing cash, bundling it, prepping bags for transfer. The same routine he runs every single day, moving money around like it's paperwork, because to everyone else in that building, it is. Except today, one of those bags isn't going to a branch. It's going home with him.
By the time he clocks out, he's walking down Public Square with $215,000 stuffed into a paper sack. No mask, no gun, no getaway car screeching around the corner. Just a kid in a suit walking into a Friday afternoon like he's got nowhere to be. Nobody stops him. Nobody even looks at him twice. That's the last day anyone would see Theodore John Conrad for 52 years. And here's the part that should terrify every bank in America. It took them 2 full days to notice. $215,000 gone. And not one person checked the vault until Monday morning. By then, Conrad wasn't in Cleveland. He wasn't in Ohio. For all anyone knew, he wasn't even using his own name anymore.
The FBI opened a file. The U.S. Marshals opened a manhunt. Photographs went out. Warrants went out. And for the next 5 decades, one of the most wanted men in the country simply stopped existing. Until he didn't. Until a name surfaced in a quiet suburb outside Boston. A name nobody in Cleveland had ever heard. And by the time investigators finally found him, he was already dead. So how does a 20-year-old kid with no criminal record, no crew, and no experience pull off one of the cleanest heists in American history and vanish so completely that federal marshals spend 52 years chasing a ghost? Stay with this one, because the answer isn't what you think, and the ending is gonna sit with you long after this video's over.
Pause for a second. Before we get into the story, hit subscribe below. All right, perfect. Thank you.
Let's go back to the beginning. Theodore John Conrad wasn't a career criminal. He didn't have a record. He didn't run with anyone dangerous. He was a 20-year-old from Cleveland with an ordinary job and one obsession that would end up defining the rest of his life. The movie was The Thomas Crown Affair, released in 1968. Steve McQueen playing a bored, wealthy executive who masterminds a flawless bank heist, not because he needs the money, but because he wants to prove he's smarter than the system built to stop him. Conrad didn't just enjoy that movie, he was consumed by it. He watched it over and over. He talked about it constantly. And according to the people who knew him back then, he started saying something out loud that most people would have written off as a joke. He said stealing a fortune and disappearing would be easy.
Most people who say that are just talking. Conrad was planning, and the terrifying part is nobody around him realized the difference until it was far too late to matter. He got a job as a teller at Society National Bank on Public Square, and that job handed him something almost no bank robber in history ever gets for free: total legitimate access to the vault. No mask needed, no alarm to disable, no wall to tunnel through. He was already inside the building every single day, trusted with exactly the kind of access that made the entire plan possible. Part of his job was packaging cash, bundling bills for transport between branches, prepping deposits, handling the internal movement of money that happens behind the scenes at every bank in the country. Nobody blinked when Conrad handled large sums of cash. That wasn't suspicious. That was literally the job description. So picture the system he was operating inside. A vault with real money flowing through it constantly. A teller trusted enough to prep transfer bags without a second signature, without anyone double-checking his work. And here's the one crack in that system that nobody had bothered to seal. Conrad had never been fingerprinted. Not once.
In 1969, banks didn't require it as a condition of employment the way they eventually would. No deep background check, no biometric record sitting in a federal database. Nothing tying his physical identity to anything the government could search if he ever disappeared. He was, on paper, a blank slate, a 20-year-old with a face and a job, and nothing connecting that face to anything that could follow him once he walked out the door. That's the crack, and Conrad found it before a single person at that bank even thought to look for it.
On the morning of Friday, July 11th, 1969, he showed up to work like it was any other day. Punched in, said good morning to people he'd probably never see again. Went through the motions of an ordinary shift at an ordinary bank in an ordinary American city. Nobody in that building had any idea what was about to happen. At some point during the day, Conrad did what he always did, prepared a package of cash for transfer. Except this one wasn't going to a branch across town. This one was going into a bag for himself. $215,000. In 1969, that's not just a big payday. That's generational money. Enough to buy houses and cash, enough to disappear for a lifetime, if you were smart enough to do it right. Adjusted for today's dollars, we're talking somewhere north of $1.5 million. Some estimates put it closer to $1.89 million. And by every account afterward, Conrad didn't rush. He didn't panic. He didn't look over his shoulder every 5 seconds like a man about to commit the biggest crime of his life. He was calm, methodical, moving through the final hours of his shift like someone with absolutely nowhere else to be. Then, he clocked out. Walked out the front doors of Society National Bank, onto Public Square, into the middle of a Friday afternoon. No alarm, no chase, no dye pack exploding in his hands, no security guard tackling him at the door. Just a young man in a suit, disappearing into a crowd of people heading home for the weekend, carrying a fortune in a paper bag, like it was his lunch. And here's where this story stops sounding real. Friday was the end of the work week. The bank closed its doors like it did every weekend. The vault sat there, untouched, same as always. Nobody checked the books. Not that night, not Saturday, not Sunday. 2 full days, 48 hours where $215,000 was simply gone. And not one single person on Earth knew it yet. Think about that head start. 2 days is an eternity when you're planning to vanish. 2 days to put distance between yourself and everyone who'd ever recognize your face. 2 days while the money sat quietly, making his escape possible, and the bank had no idea anything was even wrong. By the time a teller finally opened that vault Monday morning and realized the numbers didn't add up, Conrad was already gone. Not late for work. Gone. And he never showed up that Monday either. That's when it clicked. That's when Society National Bank realized their vault hadn't just come up short. It had been robbed by one of their own in broad daylight. A federal warrant went out fast. Embezzlement, falsifying bank records. By September of 1969, Conrad had been formally indicted in federal court. His name and photograph circulated to every agency that might cross paths with him. But indicting a man who's already gone doesn't put handcuffs on him. The FBI and the U.S. Marshals Service opened what would become one of the longest-running fugitive investigations in Ohio history. They pulled his old records, his yearbook photos. Anyone who'd ever known him in Cleveland got a knock on the door and a list of questions they couldn't answer. And here's the part that must have driven investigators up the wall for decades. Because Conrad had never been fingerprinted, they didn't have the one tool that catches most fugitives the moment they slip up. No print to match if he ever got pulled over. No print to match if he ever got arrested for something as small as a parking violation. No biometric trail at all. Just an old photograph of a 20-year-old kid, slowly going out of date with every year that passed. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. The leads dried up. Cleveland moved on. The case sat in a drawer somewhere, periodically reopened, worked by a rotating cast of marshals who inherited a cold file and painfully little else to go on.
Meanwhile, roughly 500 miles away, in a quiet suburb outside Boston, a man named Thomas Randall was quietly building the life Conrad had planned for all along. Nobody in Lynnfield, Massachusetts had any reason to suspect the friendly guy down the street was one of the most wanted fugitives in the entire country. Randall showed up sometime around 1970, just months after Conrad vanished from Cleveland. He found work. He built a reputation. By every account from the people who actually knew him, he was likable, generous, the kind of guy neighbors described warmly, not suspiciously. Nobody who met Thomas Randall ever looked twice, the same way nobody at that bank ever looked twice. He got married, had a daughter, coached golf, sold cars for a living, cooked elaborate meals for his family, and perfected new recipes the way other people perfect a craft they actually love. And in a detail that feels almost too on the nose to be real, Randall's home in Lynnfield sat close to the very location where the Thomas Crown affair had been filmed. The same movie that planted the idea in Conrad's head as a 20-year-old obsessive in Cleveland. He built his second life practically in the shadow of the film that inspired his first crime, and never once said a word about it to anyone. For 52 years, Ted Conrad, the fugitive the U.S. Marshals had been hunting relentlessly since 1969, had simply stopped existing, and Thomas Randall had been standing in his place for over half a century. 52 years of birthdays, 52 years of holidays, 52 years of a wife falling asleep next to a man whose real name she'd never once heard. Then, in May of 2021, everything started to unravel. Not because investigators finally caught up to him, but because his body did. Randall was dying. Lung cancer. Terminal. 71 years old. And there, in what were almost certainly his final conversations, he told his family the truth. Not to the police, not to a lawyer, to his wife and his daughter. The two people who had spent decades loving a man they never fully knew. He told them who he really was, what he'd done back in the summer of 1969. 52 years of silence, unraveling in a hospital room, piece by piece, in the last days he had left.
Thomas Randall died on May 18th, 2021. And for a moment, that might have been the end of it. A quiet death in a Boston suburb, a grieving family, a secret buried along with him, forever out of reach of the law that had been chasing it for half a century. But secrets have a way of leaving a trail, even the ones we think we've covered perfectly. U.S. Marshal Peter Elliott had a connection to this case that almost no investigator ever gets. His own father, John K. Elliott, had been one of the original deputy U.S. Marshals assigned to hunt Conrad back in 1969. His father spent years chasing a man who seemed to have vanished into thin air and passed away without ever seeing the case closed. Peter Elliott didn't just inherit a case file. He inherited his father's unfinished business. And in November of 2021, months after Randall's death, investigators found the thread that finally unraveled 52 years of careful invisibility.
His obituary. Elliott wouldn't say exactly how they found it, but somewhere buried in a few paragraphs meant to honor a beloved husband and father was the one crack in a disguise that had otherwise been airtight for over half a century. From there, it became a matter of connecting the dots. Old records from Conrad's life in 1960s Cleveland, newer paperwork from Randell's life in Massachusetts, including a federal bankruptcy filing from 2014 that finally gave investigators a paper trail they could actually match name to name, document to document. Piece by piece, Thomas Randell of Lynnfield, Massachusetts became, on paper, unmistakably the same man as Theodore John Conrad of Cleveland, Ohio. That November, the U.S. Marshals Service announced it publicly. One of the nation's most wanted fugitives, missing for 52 years, had finally been identified. He just wasn't alive to be arrested for it. He covered his trail really well, Marshal Elliott said. It's really unbelievable that he lived the way he did for so many years.
For half a century, Ted Conrad got exactly what that movie he couldn't stop watching had promised him. The perfect disappearance. No capture, no trial, no prison sentence, not a single day behind bars. He built a real life, a real family, a real career, all resting quietly on the foundation of a heist nobody ever solved while he was alive to face the consequences. But here's the question worth sitting with as this one closes out. Was it worth it? 52 years of being someone else. 52 years of a wife who loved a man she didn't fully know. A daughter who grew up with a father built on a name that was never really his. 52 years of never once being able to tell the truth about where he came from, what he'd done, who he actually was, until the very end, when it no longer mattered to the law, but mattered more than anything to the people who loved him. He got away with the money. Nobody's arguing that. But he spent the rest of his life as someone else. And he only told the truth when he had nothing left to lose. So which one are you watching right now? The story of a genius who beat an unbeatable system? Or the story of a man who paid for that paper bag of cash with the only thing that was ever really his? His own name. If you like these types of videos, be sure to check out our other videos on my channel, and don't forget to subscribe.